When you step onto a plane, it looks simple. Rows of seats, trays, little screens, and overhead bins. But don't be fooled, that's just the surface. Economy, premium economy, business, first. These aren't random labels. They're products, created over decades, to squeeze the most cash out of passengers. Some people shell out thousands for lie-flat seats, champagne, and privacy doors. Others end up crammed in row 43, knees practically under their chin, hoping at least the Wi-Fi works. Same plane, totally different realities. So why does this system exist? And what actually makes one class different from another, besides the obvious stuff like bigger seats or better food? To answer that, we need to roll back the clock. Because airline classes didn't just appear. They were created, step by step, through history, technology, competition, and a whole lot of psychology. The early days of flying. Let's start in the 1930s and 40s. Back then, flying wasn't just travel. It was straight-up luxury. Picture this. You're boarding a Douglas DC-3 or a Boeing 307 Stratoliner. Only 20 or 30 passengers fit on the whole plane. The seats? Wide, leather, more like armchairs than airplane seats. Meals? Served on white tablecloths with actual silverware. Legroom? Endless. Basically, the vibe was less airplane and more private club in the sky. But here's the kicker. A transatlantic ticket cost the equivalent of $8,000 to $10,000 in today's money. So yeah, unless you were super wealthy, you weren't going anywhere. Airlines didn't even need separate classes. Flying itself was the class barrier. This was the golden age of glamour in the air. But of course, it couldn't stay that way forever. The jet age and the birth of economy, 1950s. The big shift came in the 1950s. Enter the jet age. The Boeing 707 could carry over 150 passengers. Suddenly, flying wasn't just for movie stars and millionaires. It was within reach for middle-class families, too. Well, kinda. In 1952, British Overseas Airways, basically British Airways before it was British Airways, launched something new, tourist class. This was the first real economy cabin. The seats were smaller, rows packed tighter, the food simpler, but the prices? Way lower. Families could finally afford to fly across the Atlantic without selling a kidney. And just like that, the curtain was born. Richer passengers got the front, with better food and more comfort. Everyone else? Squeezed in the back. Airlines had discovered something powerful: segmentation. If you give people different levels of comfort at different prices, you can fill more seats and make more money. And the more people flying, the bigger the opportunity to divide them up. Supersized planes and first-class splendor, 1970s. By the 1970s, the Boeing 747, nicknamed Queen of the Skies, took things to a whole new level. This plane could carry more than 400 passengers, and airlines had fun with that space. Pan Am and TWA, for example, turned the upstairs section of the 747 into lounges. Spiral staircases led to cocktail bars, piano players, and plush seating. Yes, people were literally sipping martinis mid-flight at 35,000 feet. Meanwhile, downstairs in economy, rows and rows of 9 or even 10 seats across. Elbow to elbow, knees jammed into the tray table, praying the person in front didn't recline. Same plane, two totally different worlds. This was the first time airlines could really carve out those worlds within a world inside one aircraft. You could have champagne and caviar upstairs, or chicken and rice in a plastic tray downstairs. And people were willing to pay big to be on the better side of the curtain. The rise of business class, 1980s, 1990s. By the early 1980s, airlines realized they had a problem. Economy was too cramped, first class was too expensive, and passengers were stuck choosing between sardines or spoil yourself. So airlines invented something in between, business class. At first it wasn't fancy. Think slightly wider seats, a bit more legroom, and meals that weren't just chicken or pasta. But here's the thing. It worked. Passengers who didn't want to suffer in economy, but couldn't justify a first-class splurge, jumped at the middle option. Airlines quickly noticed the gold mine. By the late 90s, carriers like British Airways and Cathay Pacific were upgrading business class with lie-flat seats. Imagine going from knees in your chest to actually sleeping flat across the Atlantic. That was revolutionary. Suddenly, business class wasn't just a middle option, it was the star of the show. Some airlines even cut their first-class cabins because business was outselling them. Why sell $10,000 first-class tickets when you could sell $45,000 business ones? The math was obvious. Premium economy and the middle-class upgrade, 1990s, 2000s. If the 80s and 90s were about creating business class, the 2000s were about maxing out every class possible. At the top, airlines went full luxury arms race. Emirates started installing actual showers on its A380s. Singapore Airlines created suites class, basically a tiny hotel room in the sky, complete with sliding doors. Etihad went even further with the Residence, a 3-room suite with a living room, bedroom, and shower, plus a personal butler. Yes, a butler at 35,000 feet. Meanwhile, down in the back, budget airlines like Ryanair and Spirit were pushing the opposite extreme. They squeezed seat pitch down to 28 inches. Translation, your knees are done for. Meals, pay extra. Baggage, extra. Printing a boarding pass at the airport, extra. Even choosing a seat? You guessed it, extra. This polar opposite strategy, super luxury at the top, bare bones at the bottom, set the stage for the middle child. Premium economy. How airlines plan cabins. Today, premium economy started popping up in the 1990s with airlines like Virgin Atlantic and EVA Air, but it didn't really catch fire until the 2000s. The pitch was simple. Pay 20–30% more, get a few extra inches of leg room, slightly better food, maybe a free drink. And here's the kicker. People loved it. Why? Because it felt like an escape hatch. You weren't crammed in economy with zero wiggle room, but you weren't dropping thousands for business class either. It was the treat yourself but not too much option. From the airline's perspective, premium economy was genius. A premium economy seat takes up about 1.3 times the space of an economy seat. But airlines charge 2 to 3 times the price. That's pure margin. Take a London-New York flight. Economy might sell for $600, premium economy for $1,500, and business for $5,000. If you fill 50 premium economy seats, that's an extra $50,000 to $60,000 per flight, without having to serve caviar or pour Dom Perignon. It's no surprise airlines like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, and Air France keep expanding their premium economy cabins. It's the perfect middle-class splurge. Tricks of the trade, the psychology of flying. So what does this look like today? Let's take the Boeing 787 Dreamliner or the Airbus A350, two of the most popular long-haul planes. A typical layout might look like this. 30 business class seats, the real moneymakers. 40 premium economy seats, the profitable middle ground. 200 economy seats, packed full, keeping planes full and fares competitive. Every single section is carefully planned. It's not random. Airlines run endless simulations to figure out how many seats in each cabin make the most money. Sometimes moving just one row from economy to business class can mean millions of extra dollars in yearly revenue. And that's why airlines obsess over their seat maps. They're not just shoving chairs in randomly. They're playing a massive game of how much can we make from every square inch of this plane. Soft product, selling the experience. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets spicy. On a long-haul Boeing 777, a single row of 9 economy seats might bring in around $7,500. Not bad, right? But one row of just 4 business class seats, over $14,000. That's double the revenue with less than half the passengers. This is why airlines fight so hard to keep classes separate. If every seat were the same, no one would pay extra. That business traveler who normally spends $4,000, they'd happily pay $500 if that were the only option. The whole revenue system would collapse overnight. Classes aren't just about comfort. They're about protecting the money flow. The curtain isn't just fabric. It's an economic firewall. Economy designed for contrast. And here's the fun part. Sometimes airlines don't even need to change seats. They just change the rules. Take basic economy, which has popped up in the last decade. It's literally the same seat as economy, but with extra restrictions. No seat selection, no refunds, board last, and sometimes not even access to overhead bins. The seat hasn't changed. Psychology has. By making the basic economy worse, airlines make the regular economy feel like an upgrade, even though it used to be the default. And plenty of passengers pay the difference. It's like selling bottled water for $2 next to tap water that suddenly costs $1. You're not really getting more. You're just paying not to suffer. Airlines are masters at this game. And once you notice how they do it with prices, you start spotting it everywhere else on the plane. One of the sneakiest examples? That little blue or gray curtain between cabins. It looks harmless, but it's basically a mind game. When you board a plane, you almost always walk past the good seats first. The big recliners, the pods, the champagne, that's not an accident. Airlines want you to see what you're missing. It plants a seed in your brain. One day I'll sit here. In fact, an MIT study in 2018 found that passengers seated right behind the premium cabin were 20% more likely to pay for an upgrade on their next flight. That flimsy curtain isn't just fabric. It's advertising, price anchoring, and incremental upgrades. It's not just about the seat you're in, it's also about how the airline makes you feel. Think about priority boarding. Getting on before the crowd feels amazing, right? You stroll past the line, toss your bag overhead with ease, and sit back while everyone else struggles. Objectively, it costs the airline nothing, but subjectively, it feels priceless. That's why loyalty programs are so addictive. They tap into our natural craving for hierarchy. Gold, platinum, diamond, these aren't just labels, they're badges of honor. A seat in row 32 feels very different if you boarded in Group 1 and stashed your bag before everyone else. And airlines cash in big on this. Delta, for example, makes billions each year from co-branded credit cards. In 2023, Delta's Sky Miles credit card partnerships alone brought in over $6.5 billion. Much of that money wasn't about flights. It was about perks like free bags, lounge access, and that magical priority feeling. Here's another secret. What airlines sell you isn't just the seat, it's the vibe. A business class bed might only be 6 inches wider than a premium economy seat, but when you add champagne, white tablecloths, and flight attendants calling you sir or ma'am, it feels like a different universe. This is called the soft product, the service, food, and branding. Studies show passengers often rate the soft product as more important than the hard product, the actual seat. In other words, the warm smile and glass of bubbly matter more than the engineering of the chair. And airlines know it. They'll spend millions training crews to deliver exclusivity, even though the real costs, like serving champagne instead of Prosecco, are minimal. The profit margin is all in perception. A lot of premium tickets aren't paid by individuals. They're paid by companies. Business travelers get to enjoy lie flat beds and steak dinners, but someone else is footing the bill. That creates a weird kind of guilt. So, airlines design their premium cabins to feel efficient instead of indulgent. Business class emphasizes productivity, Wi-Fi, work lighting, healthier meals. It's sold as an investment in efficiency instead of luxury. First class, on the other hand, leans into indulgence. Caviar, pajamas, chauffeur cars, onboard showers. It's about exclusivity. Airlines carefully shape each product to match the psychology of the buyer. Here's where it gets sneaky. Airlines don't just make the economy small because of space, they make it small to create contrast. If the economy were perfectly fine, who would bother upgrading? Instead, airlines shrink seat pitch from 34 inches in the 1980s to as little as 28 inches on budget carriers today. Meals get worse. Boarding takes longer. Baggage rules tighten. Suddenly, that extra $50 for Comfort Plus or $200 for an exit row seems so worth it. It's the illusion of fairness. You're not buying luxury. You're buying an escape from discomfort that the airline designed in the first place. Qantas, for example, charges up to $200 extra for exit row seats on long-haul flights. The actual cost to the airline? Basically zero. The value to you, stretching your legs at 35,000 feet? Huge. That's the trick. Another psychological hack airlines use is price anchoring. Let's say economy is $500, premium economy is $1,500, and business class is $5,000. At first glance, business seems insane, but compared to $5,000, premium economy suddenly looks reasonable. That's the point. Even if very few people buy the $5,000 seat, its mere existence nudges thousands of passengers to spend more than they originally planned. It's like putting a $50 steak on a menu just so the $30 steak looks like a bargain. Airlines don't just sell you a seat, they sell you a choice where the middle option always feels smartest. Airlines know most passengers can't drop thousands for business, but they still want you to spend more. So they create tiny incremental upgrades that feel achievable. $30 for early boarding, $50 for extra legroom, $100 for premium economy light. Each step is small enough to justify, but when millions of people pay it, the revenue is massive. Think of it as the airline version of in-app purchases. Seats keep getting tighter, meals keep disappearing, and baggage keeps costing more. Why? Because if the economy were too comfortable, nobody would ever pay extra. That suffering creates demand for upgrades. Airlines don't want you to hate flying completely. They just want you to hate it enough that you'll pay to make it better. It's like a video game where the free version is frustrating just enough that you eventually buy the premium pass. That's it for our deep dive into airline classes. Would you splurge for a lie-flat seat or stick to economy? Ever wondered why those curtains and cabin layouts exist? Subscribe now to uncover more secrets behind the skies and see what really makes flights tick.